Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Manifest Your Success podcast. Today, we are joined by Judy Murray. Judy is the owner of Baja Burrito, a standalone California-style Mexican restaurant that has been successfully operating since 1995. Welcome to the show, Judy.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Nice to be here.
Yeah, so actually this is really interesting because I've never actually talked to someone that's opened like a restaurant, like a private restaurant. So like what kind of motivated you? Like, did you have like something when you were growing up that kind of motivated you to the restaurant atmosphere, like being around people, serving people food, or like how did that kind of grow to you as a person?
I mean, I could probably go back to when I was a candy striper and they were like, where do you want to be? And I'm like, I don't know. And they put me in the cafe and I started to make milkshakes and was at the counter and serving people. And I was like, I love this. So I could almost take it back to there, you know. But there's food on both sides of my family. My mom's mom had a grocery store. So she grew up in this tiny little Eastern North Carolina mom and pop grocery store. And then my dad's dad had restaurants, and then he opened a wholesale food distribution business, but he sold to grocery stores. So food is really on both sides of my family in sort of different respects, and also entrepreneurship.
That's awesome. So what is a candy striper? I've never heard that term before.
Oh yeah,
so
it's a volunteer at a hospital. So I wore the little candy striper, like pink and white apron kind of thing, and and little hat. That was what you did back in the day. I'm older. And I loved working in the cafe. It was I just knew, I was like, this is so fun. So I think I've just always loved this type of work.
Yes, sorry. So
yeah.
I'm curious, you said you were also into entrepreneurship. Were there any other kind of entrepreneurial endeavors you got into before opening Baja Burrito?
That's a good question, but no, it's funny. I mean, I always have been a hard worker. That's kind of is really the basis of my entrepreneurship, is that I like to work hard, and I sort of like to be my own, boss. So I always had second jobs, like throughout my 20s after college. So I could travel and things like that, but no, never. I did never did. This was it was a big risk, and I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah, I feel like I at least for me personally, I grew up working for my opa's business, and he was kind of someone that kind of implemented the work ethic that he had into me. So like, did you have someone in your life that really just kind of pushed you and like, say, this is what you need to do, this is your job, or like how did that mold you?
Yeah, my dad was a big part of that. I mean, he was very much about, I'm giving you these opportunities as an education, and bringing you up and giving you some different experiences. And when you're finished with college, you're on your own. I've given you the tools, so you got to go and do it. And so, yeah, that was a big part of our being brought up, was taking care of ourselves when we became of age.
Yeah, so I kind of want to dive into how you got like the idea for Baja Burrito and how you got that started. So I know you mentioned you were kind of in and out of different like restaurant-related positions. What made you decide you wanted to open a restaurant of the type that Baja Burrito is, where you're ordering? It's like a Chipotle style, where they're making the food in front of you. And what made you choose like California style Mexican?
So that is a sort of a long answer because it's not really super clear. I was a food broker when I lived in San Francisco. I moved to San Francisco after college. Let's start there probably. And
so what made you move to San Francisco after college? I'm really curious. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, I knew I wanted to sort of see the world and start traveling. And I had one friend in Boston, and I had one brother who I wasn't that close to, but he lived in San Francisco, or close to San Francisco. And I was like, okay, I'll go to San Francisco. So he let me live with him. He had a Domino's pizza franchise, and he let me live with him and deliver pizzas for him while he was off having fun. And so I was working for him. And then I moved into San Francisco and started my life there. And I became a food broker, which is somebody who sells food to like wholesale, but then they sell it to restaurants and hospitals and stuff. So I was in the food business kind of naturally. That kind of happened sort of naturally too. And we would eat burritos, after being downtown San Francisco, and most weekend nights, we would get a burrito at like 2 a.m. So I love burritos. I'd never had anything like that before. I'd never seen anything like this. The first one I saw, somebody brought it. It was wrapped in foil. I'm like, what is this? And he's like, it's a burrito. So it was brand new, to me. Because coming from North Carolina, there wasn't coffee, there wasn't burritos, there wasn't a lot of things that were out there in California. So fast forward 8 years, and I knew I was ready to come back to North Carolina because I couldn't afford it, like to have a house there or travel. And see my family on holidays is just stressful. So I moved. Before I moved back, I said, I'm going to open a business. And I thought I was going to do coffee because there was no coffee in North Carolina when I left. And when I came back, there was only 1 cup of joe. That was it. And so I tried to figure that out. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just winging it, And so I tried to figure it out. And a friend of mine came to visit, and I showed her a space that I was looking at. And she said, Judy, why don't you do burritos? And I'm like, burritos? I don't know how to make a burrito. And so, I don't know, it just kind of snowballed from there. And I just put one foot in front of the other, and somehow.
So you did make a run at the coffee option?
I didn't make a run.
Oh, okay.
I just started looking at locations and trying to figure out a way to do it. And nothing was just lining up. Nothing felt right. And I just couldn't get it going. Nothing felt right.
Right. So what's like the process? I know probably a lot has changed since you moved here to Raleigh, like 20 years. This is one of the fastest growing cities in the country right now. But like, what is the process that you went through for like finding a place to lease out, like for a restaurant? Like, how does that work? Do you have to get like certificates or like approval from the government, or how does that work?
No, I mean, I just started driving around looking at areas that I thought would be good for coffee / then burritos. And then I just went into some of the stores, and I was just like, what's your traffic like in the shopping center? And so I found Mission Valley, which is where I am, and I talked to some of the people, and then I found a guy who was like, you want to buy my store? And I was like, maybe. And so it was more like that. I don't think I used an agent. I'm kind of anti all that stuff. I've never really used lawyers or agents or anything like that. So I just put one foot in front of the other. We figured out a little agreement. I bought his old gross equipment. I talked to the landlord. I signed a lease, and I just was like, okay, I have 3 months to figure this out, and I just started making phone calls.
So what was the first phone call you made?
I don't even know what the first call. I mean, that was a long time ago, 27 years ago.
I'm sure the first, I don't know, if I was starting like a restaurant and you said burritos, but you don't know how to make burritos, like first thing I would do in our day and age is just type in how to make a burrito recipe or something like that.
I didn't even do that because my first concern was getting the space refitted, properly, like the kitchen cleaned up, the electrical, getting it pulled up to code. So I started making phone calls to the permit department, like, okay, what do I need to do? And then I called people, like I called electricians, I called plumbers. I just was really constantly asking questions. I think that's the key to my success is that I've asked questions, and I want to learn from other people. So, and I got lucky.
Yeah, I think that's really important, is to be willing to ask questions and not just, guess what you're doing, but to like ask people that know the answers. Yeah. And you can learn from them.
Well, and so the thing that I'll say to that is, I would ask tons of people, and then I would, decide what I would take all that and sort of figure out, and I still do that to this day, and then figure out what's the best path forward for me. But yeah, absolutely, because there's a wealth of information out there. You just have to ask. So. Right.
So I'm curious, do you still have the same recipes that you do when you started as you do today? Okay.
Yes, they've just gotten bigger amounts, bigger quantities.
So do you remember like the first meal that you were like, okay, I'm going to put this on the menu because this is good? And how did you come up with it?
Oh my gosh. Well, I had my set few little things. We've expanded the menu some, but not hugely. But I had my first little things that we made. And I remember trying to make what we call our mole recipe, which some people think that I shouldn't call it mole because that is connotated a lot of times with a chocolate, ingredient, which we don't put chocolate in ours. But my first employee was like, no, this is called mole. Like, it just means like a hodgepodge of all kinds of ingredients. So trying to make that was interesting and but fun, and it all just flowed. It all just came together, and so I felt good about that.
Yeah, so I know you said that you were kind of asking a lot of questions and figuring things out as you went. But in your early years, was there anything that was particularly like super challenging, or any major obstacles you ran into when you were trying to get things up and running?
I always would just say when people ask me if I knew how hard it was going to be, I would have never done it, because it was really hard. I wouldn't say there was not one challenge. it was just all a uphill battle because I knew nothing about it. I mean, I had been a food broker, but I hadn't worked as a server or a catering person, but I'd never really run a restaurant or bought the food or any of that. So I wouldn't say there was one. It was just all a big challenge.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and I'm curious. So, I don't know, when I'm kind of thinking about like what I want to do with my life, I'm only 20 years old, so I feel like I could take it so many ways right now. And like I kind of think of like, okay, if this area fails, then I have this to back up on. So like, what was your mindset in that? Was it like you burn the bridges, like, okay, you're fully committing to this restaurant? Or was it like, oh, if I fail at this restaurant, I can go back to being a broker, I can go back to doing X, Y, and Z?
That's funny because I never thought about it failing. I just was like, this is going to work because I love burritos, and who wouldn't? I mean, so and Raleigh needed burritos. So I always just looked forward, and I think that's a big thing too. One, be 100% passionate and committed, which I was, because I just thought it was a great idea to bring burritos to Raleigh, and I never looked back. I never did. I definitely didn't think about what if it didn't work. I didn't. Because you know what? I think I was so busy trying to figure out how to get it opened and get it going and run it. I didn't have time to like second guess. I was committed.
I think that's such a powerful mentality, and you see that in a lot of successful people where they're not worried about like plan B. They're just full in on what they're doing, and nothing's going to stop them from accomplishing it.
Absolutely, and I think that is key. I mean, I really do, because I've said that before to different people. If you aren't 100% committed, it won't work. I mean, it might work, but it's not going to work, as well as you'd like it to. So, yeah, I think that's a good question. Yeah.
Yeah. So you saw this hole obviously in Raleigh, North Carolina, where there's no burritos, and I mean, who doesn't love burritos? You ate them all day in San Francisco.
Yeah.
So like, did you just like, you were just the only person making burritos in Raleigh at the time or nearby, or like when did you first come across like a competitor or someone in the area?
So it's funny because when I moved back to Raleigh, I lived with my sister, and she lived over in another part of Raleigh, and there was a California-style burrito shop getting ready to open, and they opened about 4 months before I opened. Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
And they got there. They had also lived out, not in San Francisco, but I think in the Southern California, and they opened right before me, and I would go in there. I'm like, I really want to tell them that they need to fix this and this and make their this. It's so funny, but I was working on mine when they opened. So that was really it. It was just us two for the longest time in Raleigh.
So do you think anything separated you like from them?
I mean, we were just a little different.
Without like completely shitting on their business.
Yeah, no, and they have a good product.
Yeah.
I just mine was set up to be. I have sort of a sense of urgency when people come in, because I kind of set mine up to be a quicker serve, like for people coming in for lunch, all around NC State, and and that you could also. When I first opened, we would ask you the questions as we're making your burrito, because that's how they do it in California. And but I had to change that after about a year, because we were just yelling at people over the sneeze guard, over the glass. And so I changed that to where we now ask, as Sam knows, all the questions on the order form. But that kind of set us apart, because you could not get you didn't have to just say I want that. You could get how you wanted it, a little extra this, a little extra that, So
yeah.
I felt like that was a good thing, and it still is. People still can sort of customize their burrito.
Right. And me and Sam were talking to two gentlemen yesterday, and they were really just talking about how if you really want to provide like a successful product or business, you really just have to minimize the time that gives them the product or business. And I feel like that's exactly what you did with Baja Burrito.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think people are always surprised when they come in and, they order a burrito, and in like 30 seconds, it's in a bag waiting for them.
Right.
And I think that's a lot of maybe some of the reason that you had so much success is because a lot of people, like you said, are just coming in for lunch and they want to get back out because they have a short lunch shift or something.
Right, and they just know it's not going to, because a lot of times, one, you're hungry. People come in hungry. Two, you're like, I don't want to, what? But they know that we're going to be fast. Like, they don't want to wait a long time and like have it to be this endeavor. And also, I've always made it important to my employees that this is important. This is a priority. This is what I need from you as an employee too. we go quick.
Right.
I mean, and that's kind of how I've kind of always laid the
Right.
the framework.
So I'm curious, like, on what you think kind of about, like, the fast food industry, like, in whole. I wouldn't classify your restaurant as fast food. I've never tried it myself, but I wouldn't classify it as fast food. I think Chipotle is kind of in that category, but they're also, like, they're giving food that's kind of healthy. And
Yeah.
It's not, like, all grease and, like, 90% of what you order isn't something that's, like, super bad for you.
Well, I've been glad to see that in the last, 10 years or so, that there has been. It was upsetting to me. I felt like every time I went to dinner or went to lunch, I had to spend 20 or up to get healthy food. There was nothing fast and quick like Baja Burrito. And so that I'm glad that has come into the fast food industry, because I don't enjoy the fast food industry of olden days. I mean, like, all the whatever,
I think it's causing a lot of problems, I think, in society. I mean,
absolutely.
It's like the most convenient thing is literally McDonald's, like Bojangles,
yeah,
Popeyes.
and it's so cheap.
Yes.
But it's so bad for you. So I've been so happy to see the influx of new healthy fast food genre, really.
Yeah, so I'm curious, because fast food franchises like that are so cheap and so convenient, was it ever like, were there ever any big fast food franchises like McDonald's? I know there's a Domino's or a Papa John's, I think, right across from Baja. Were there ever any of those that were popping up and kind of you noticed that they were stealing market share from you guys and kind of almost forcing you out of business, or were you always just trucking along?
People would come in sometimes and ask for things like in the same language as Taco Bell, and I'm like, oh no, this is not Taco Bell. I'm like, you need to go down the street if you want to eat rehydrated food. I said, this is Baja Burrito. So, I mean, I never felt like those places impacted me, but then when burrito shops started opening and like some other sort of lower priced, healthier options, I felt like I did start getting impacted. Raleigh has just exploded with restaurants in the past 15 years. I mean, it was like 2 were opening a day. So I've felt it, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I was like king of the land over there, like in Mission Valley. I mean, there was hardly any other stuff like mine,
Yeah, and you're all the way across campus from, like, there's Hillsborough Street on the other side of campus, but no one's going to walk all the way up to Hillsborough Street when there's so many apartments.
Right, and also, like, there's also environment, not environment, but where students live and things like that is also changed. A lot of things, so many things have changed in 27 years, like environmentally, I mean, economically, and just, the means that people have that they didn't used to have. Students used to always live all just around NC State. Now they live all over.
Right.
So it's a very different world.
Yeah, it is for
sure.
So I'm curious. So once you like kind of got this up and running, and I feel like the next step, once you learn how to make burritos and how to provide a good service, you obviously are trying to hire employees to teach people to do it. So what was that process like? Were you just looking for people that could just fill the line and just do everything, or was it kind of like, okay, I need to find a manager, and like how did that process play out?
So all of my employees pretty much always have done everything. I mean, from prepping to making burritos to washing dishes to mopping, and I've just sort of always had an everything employee. I've not really had many managers over the years because I've sort of been able to either manage sort of from afar or manage if I am working, manage in there. So for maybe a period of like 4 or 5 years, I did have a manager, and I didn't work really that much. But mostly I've just had employees that know how to do enough of everything that they could just call me and I could sort of walk them through it on the phone if there was any problems or they needed to figure something out. So, and that's helped me, I think, because they weren't so specific that, that they could do anything. So that they could help me kind of manage.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the employees you have now have been around almost since it opened, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I feel so blessed. I mean, most of my employees are over 15 years with me, and that's probably 6 people. And so, yeah, and I've always had longevity employees. Even college kids would stay with me through the graduate school, and sometimes they'd maybe quit for like 6 months and then come back, and work for another year or two, depending. So I've always had really great long-term employees.
What do you think contributes to that? Like, as obviously, please toot your horn as much as you like. But like, what do you think contributes to making employees happy? Like, how do you, if you're someone that has employees in your company, how do you make them want to come to work every day and enjoy it?
Right. Well, one of the big things that I did was I would always ask them what their schedule was before I made my schedule, because I didn't want to put, I mean, I'm not one of those managers that's like, this is a schedule, you're working it. I was like, that's just going to bite you in the foot, so I always would ask, what's going, what are y'all doing? Can you work this, and this? Because, and then they'd be like, yes or no. And so I always have had mostly people show up. I mean, people just don't not come to work there, and it's kind of something that I've not put up with, but also I've just never had the problem. So I think that was really big, that I try and get to know my employees and care. I do care about them. It's like true. I mean, it's real, So I think that's pretty big.
Yeah, I think that's so valuable. You see in a lot of successful companies as well. You see bosses who aren't just acting like a boss; they almost act like a friend, and they try and get to know their employees more.
Yeah.
That always leads to more success.
I mean, I feel like it's obviously been helpful for me, but it wasn't contrived. It's just really original and honest, because I enjoy people, especially if they're working with me and they're working for me. So I appreciate that they are working. So it all has worked out. It's a good symbiotic relationship.
Yeah, so I want to kind of get into how Baja Burrito has been around for so long, right? And in the restaurant industry, it's brutal, it's super competitive, and you see restaurants going out of business all the time, especially in an area like this. So, I mean, you've kind of touched on this a little bit, but what do you think is like maybe the biggest things that allowed Baja Burrito to stay in business for 27 years?
Yeah. All right. So the food is super consistent, in my opinion, and I think that has to do with my long-term employees, whether they were long-term for 7 years or long-term for 25 years. That's huge. And two, seems like we know about our customers. We know their orders. We say hi. I mean, we recognize them, and customers like to be noticed, and I love that part of the business. And there was another one, but I forgot what I was going to say.
While you think about that, I do want to touch on that point you made about like connecting with people that come in regularly, because I'm valet, and I'm not really a business owner, but you can, like, I work off of tips. So if I don't connect with people, they're less likely to tip me.
Yeah.
And if people are coming in over and over again, it's clear that they're like, oh, I remember you from last time. You just strike up a really simple conversation.
Absolutely.
And it just goes a completely far way from making money.
A long way.
Yeah.
And I genuinely love to talk to people. So being predominantly at the register all these years, I'm like, oh, it's your first time in, or, oh, yeah, didn't you get the fish burrito last time, or whatever it is, because I really, really do appreciate and want to hear about it, just like my employees. So I think that's gone a long way. My employees have done that too, where they get to know the customers. And then I'll see customers out and they're like, oh my gosh, we love Luis, or we love Roberto, or whoever my employees are. And so they know them. So yeah, that is a huge part.
Yeah, so I guess backtracking a little bit, I know that, sorry, I forgot what I was going to say.
I had another point with that, but I can't remember what it was. It was something kind of important, but I don't remember what it was.
I forget. But anyways, so since you guys have been around for so long, especially like you created in 1995, since then, the internet has kind of taken over, and things like Uber Eats have come around. So I'm curious what your view is on that, or like how it was watching that unfold and being able to take those things and implement them.
So I'll have to say I am a bit of an old person, because I've never really advertised. You wouldn't believe the myriad of apps or things or ideas that have come at me for 27 years. And I just wouldn't do any of them, because it's overwhelming to me, because there's so many different ways you could go. You could just throw your money out in so many different ways. And every time I talk to one of my customers, how did you find about Baja Burrito? Oh, a friend brought me in. Oh, a coworker brought me in. Oh, my family member brought me in. So it was like 80% of how I started and how I grew my business was word of mouth. And so I have never really used much of the technology things, and I know I should, but I don't. And the only reason that I've sort of used the tablets is because I thought, well, all right, I'll spend a little extra money to get my name out there, because there's so many people looking at these tablets as we go on and on. But I have not enjoyed them because they take a lot of money from you. And yeah. So I use as minimum as possible of new technology. I mean, as evidenced when you go in there, it's like a time warp.
Right. Yeah. So I want to kind of dive in because COVID-19 came in and kind of like fast forwarded technology, and it fast forwarded like these Uber Eats and like DoorDash apps.
That's probably why I mostly escalated the tablet.
Okay. So when like what was that process from like when you were like, okay, COVID-19 is coming around the corner, and it was like big news. I think it was March 2020 when it kind of slapped everyone in the face. So how did you like react to that? Like
After
did you step back and pivot, or like what was your thought process through that?
Well, I'm lucky that we are naturally a takeout business. I mean, and we do so much takeout at night that it was just a no-brainer. We were one of the lucky restaurants that was easier to pivot. And I did get more tablets because our tablets just blew up. I mean, even though I got really upset with, the Uber Eats and the Postmates because they charging me so much, and I was like, come on, it's COVID. Are you kidding me? You guys are killing it. And I got 2 of them to lower my percentage rates. But so I just gave in and went with the tablets. And then, we got lucky. I've been there 25 years, and so we had enough customers, even though we were like in a black hole, that NC State was closed and all the people at Centennial campus were gone. We were just in this oasis of nothing. But we've had enough customers for 25 years that we had enough to pay the light bill, basically to pay the employees and to pay the light bill. Came in and traveled in to come to Baja Burrito. So I just feel so lucky, and the government helped too. But I feel so lucky that we were there long enough to last through, or I'd have been gone.
Right. Yeah.
I would have been gone.
It is amazing that you're still here.
Yeah.
It's really impressive.
It's amazing that I'm here just anyway because I'm so, it was a lot. The last 3 years has been a lot, you know?
Yeah, everyone has definitely been through a lot of stress.
Yeah, it's very taxing. Every week felt like something new that I had to handle, worry about, think about, pivot to, figure out. For at least a year, it was like that.
So I'm curious about like the Uber Eats and DoorDash, because I've actually never talked to anyone about like how if someone does have a restaurant and they want to get their product on Uber Eats or DoorDash, how does that process work? You kind of touched like they get a percentage, and like, how did you negotiate that down too?
Well, so it was funny because in the very beginning, these people would start coming in. They're like, oh, I have this order, and they just had this order, and I'm like, who are you? And they're like, I'm with whichever one was the newest, probably Uber. I don't remember. Postmates was like the newest. Oh, we're with this company, Postmates. And I'm like, Postmates? I didn't even know what it was. And we weren't signed up. And I said, I'm not signed up with y'all. What is this? And so he's like, but he paid for it. It was like they had us on their site, but they paid for it because the customer paid them. And so then I was like, well, they came in some more, and I'm like, what is this? So I called them up and asked them, and so they told me they had 30%, percentage. They take 30% off the top, and I'm like, that is highway robbery. But all right, I'll try it, And so and I did have a local company that I still use that I should give a shout out to, Takeout Central, who I love, and they were my first, but they came in and talked to me, and I signed up, and it wasn't online, they called us up, I think, or we had a printer or something really super basic, and but they talked to me before they started getting
orders. That's crazy. Someone just shows up and you're like, your restaurant's on Postmates.
Yeah, and it wasn't even the one company. It was a couple of them. And I'm like, what is this? And so I guess they just put your menu up and people will order, and they just figured out, I'm like, well, which chicken does the person want? And they're like, I don't know, because they didn't have like the whole thing. It was wild. So it's been owning a business definitely puts your fingers in lots of different aspects of life, and you just have to make so many different decisions and learn so many things.
Yeah, I think that's so crazy that they just put your menu up on there without figuring out the actual important details.
No, it was crazy. I'm like, which beans do they want? I don't, and the driver didn't know. And I was just like, this is crazy. It was probably about 10 years ago. It's life's sort of a blur, but it was a very long time ago. Well, it was when they first started. Yeah,
so I guess like in the 27 years that you guys have been around, you've kind of been through like the 2008 crisis, you made it through COVID. Were there ever any times where you were seriously like in danger of going out of business, or like really close calls with anything that might have happened?
No, and I've been through like 3 recessions. I mean, there was like one in '01, I think one in '03, and then '08 was the killer.
Yeah, '01 was like 4 years after you guys opened, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, and that one didn't affect me that much because our price point it wasn't such a horrible recession that we were okay. And then there was another one like, I don't know, '04 or '06 or I don't know. There's a blur. And that one wasn't too bad, but '08 probably is what wore me down. '08 was tough. I mean, because I was working hard, making no money basically, and that lasted a long time. I mean, I probably didn't start really seeing numbers go back up until like 15. I mean, it was a long road. So that definitely, was a like, oh my gosh, this is my business and this is reality and I have to stick it out, So, but I made it through and then we started doing well again, but it was a long, hard 7-8 years.
So what are some like practices that did you ever try meditating or like, did you just have a good support circle around you? Like what kind of like pushed you through that, like personally?
I think, I don't know. I'm just a pretty hard worker, and I see things through. And
you just always had that vision of looking at the end, just getting through it.
Yeah, I just knew it would be okay. And the other thing is that I've always seen myself also as an employee of Baja Burrito, so I can pull back my spending and my money because that's how I think that's another reason I'm successful is that I don't just spend all the money I make. I save it because I give myself a paycheck like an employee, and that I think is kind of key to having money for a rainy day,
Right. Yeah. So I'm curious. You started this almost over 20 years ago. So where do you plan to like take this like in the future?
Oh, I'm going. I'm in my golden years here I'm about to be needing a new chapter. I'm looking to do hopefully retirement soon because it's restaurant business is fun, and I think anyone should do it, but it'll take it out of you, and especially after 27 years. So I need a next chapter.
Are you thinking about selling it or transferring ownership? Or
I've thought about selling it, but there are plans to completely renovate Mission Valley Shopping Center. Oh. And that includes, I believe, tearing down all the buildings. So the next people are going to probably make a fabulous, cool area, but I don't think I'm going to be a part of that because that would just be a lot. It would be like opening a whole new restaurant.
Right. And I'm curious, just like on the topic of retirement, feel free to talk as much about it as you'd like. But like from being 20, like looking at retirement now, like I could never just imagine just like stop working. So like, how did your mindset? Let me touch on something else because it's kind of relevant. Like I'm in a psychology class and we were looking at some studies that looked at people's perception on retirement at like mid-career and then kind of late career. And the people at mid-career kind of underestimated the age that they wanted to retire at. So obviously when you're younger, you're looking at retirement and be like, oh, I can't wait for it to come. But then when you finally get there, then you're like, okay, well, honestly, what am I going to do if I don't retire? So what would you do if you retire? Like, what are some other passions that you have?
Right. So I don't necessarily want to completely retire from the working world, but I need to close this chapter because it's been a long chapter and I'm just ready for a new chapter. But that said, I've been a big traveler in my life, so I want to do some more extensive traveling because that takes time. And I have a lot of hobbies, hiking, pickleball, paddleboarding, kayaking. I mean, I love to do all kinds of outdoor sporty things. So, and I like to work. I'm going to work again. I know I will because I like that interaction with people. I like to make money too. I mean, who doesn't?
Yeah, right.
And I'm still young. I just need to close this chapter and move to the next situation, I think.
Yeah, what are some places that you want to travel maybe on your bucket list?
Yeah, there's so many, right? The world. So, I've done a lot, but there's so many places.
Space maybe?
No space.
No space?
That scares me. No.
Okay.
And every time I've tried to travel or places I go, I try and go for 3 weeks to a month because you just need that much time, especially if you're going a long way. So all the big continents that I haven't been to, Australia, New Zealand. I want to go to Japan and I wouldn't mind going back to South Africa because it's such a really beautiful, wonderful place. So, I mean, there's and places still in our country that I haven't seen.
Can you think of like the best dish that you've had? Whether it could be bought in Baja Burrito restaurant, but just around the world that you've tried, like what's the best food?
Oh goodness, I'm not really a best of person. I'm more like just an experienced person, and I have lots of good, wonderful experiences. But gosh, I don't know that I can answer that a best food.
Or maybe like a culture that you like the most.
Yeah. Well, I spent about 4 months in India, and that was amazing. It's a very different culture, and it's such a culture of extremes. There's just extreme beauty, extreme poverty, extreme wealth, and it's extreme nastiness. I mean, but it's gorgeous country, So I would like to go back to India too. I didn't see all of it. I saw a lot of it, but.
Right.
That was one of my bigger experiences.
That's awesome. So like looking back on this restaurant journey that you've had and you're still taking, like would you do anything different? And like if so, like what would that be?
I don't know that I would do anything different. I definitely would never have a partner. I mean, I've toyed with that when it was hard, but I was always thought, no, you don't want a partner. So I might have a manager. Because managing and running and being responsible is a lot. So I might have had more manager type position.
What do you think the pros and cons of a partner are in business?
Well, there's a huge factor of trust, right? So you have to trust a person, and that's tough. You never know. And also about how you want things done and how they want things done. And so I never had to deal with any of that. Even though it's really hard being the sole boss and the buck stops with me, I got to do it like I wanted to do it.
And you get rewarded too. It's like, okay, you did this all yourself.
Yeah.
It's not like, okay, maybe this person might have contributed more, like did something that's really looking back like, wow, I did all of this.
Yeah, true, I guess. Yeah, true. I mean, in the end, I know I need to be proud of all that. I mean, I am proud of myself, but, I just think I think it's easier sometimes, just depending on your personality. And my personality, it's easier.
Yeah, and I guess maybe you sort of answered this when you answered what you would have done differently, but maybe for someone that's out there and debating, like maybe I should start a restaurant or something like that, what is some advice maybe you'll have for them? Like what should they keep in mind or what should they try?
Yeah, obviously first and foremost, if you want to do it, you need to do it because you'll regret it if you don't. That's what I feel like. I think that's one of the biggest pieces of advice. Don't hem and haw. I mean, if you really, really are passionate and you can just feel it in your gut that this is like you want to do something, along the restaurant lines or along any kind of opening a business, I say do it as young as possible so that if something does happen, you have chance. You have plenty of time to move to the next situation.
Right. Like you don't want to live your life in regret.
Exactly.
By the time you're 50, like you should have done it by the time you were 30.
I think so. I mean, I moved back from California when I was 33, and or maybe I was a little younger and I opened it when I was 33. I moved back when I was 30 and I opened it when I was 33. But I just think you should definitely go for it. You've got to go for it. I mean, you can't just sit around wishing or hemming and hawing if you really feel like that's the path you want to take, because you'll never know.
That's very insightful.
Unless you jump off the cliff,
Yeah,
it's hard as hell to jump off that cliff, but do it,
Once you do it, I feel like it's a lot easier to get the ball rolling.
Yeah.
Once you just commit to
and you're so
something.
proud of yourself. I mean, I've jumped off cliffs before and it was horrible. And I'm like, so proud of myself for doing that.
Yeah, that's great. So I'm curious. So we ask all of our guests this question. I know we kind of touched on it before we hit record, so feel free to say whatever you please and we'll be happy with the answer. But like, what is one goal you have like in your life, whether it be like personal or career? Like it could be something as simple like, okay, trying to a very small habit that you want to practice more. So what is one goal, and like how are you doing, or what are you doing to achieve that?
So I probably, because of how type A I am, stress is has been a big obstacle in my life, and I've tried different things to work on it over the years, and so that's probably one of my bigger goals, is to go out in a more peaceful, stressless or stress less stress life. And so I have started a practice called transcendental meditation, and I am enjoying it. I mean, I've never been able to meditate more than 3 seconds, basically, because of my nature, but I can. I do it twice a day for 20 minutes. I'm like, really? And I love it. I don't know. We'll see. I told my sister, I said, well, just let's see what happens, see what you see what effects, it has. We'll see.
So what type of meditation is that? Because I know there's several types of meditation. So how does that one work?
There are. I think it's more like what a lot of the monks, how the monks meditate. You use a mantra, and you just say the mantra in your head. So that's mostly all I know about it. I mean, I was given like my own little mantra.
Do you remember one? Can you put us through a meditation right now?
Oh, no. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. So it's just literally 20 minutes of you saying your mantra in your head. Okay. And so that's what keeps you, I mean, thoughts come and go, but then you go back to your mantra and thoughts come and go and you go back. Because, there's different ones, there's like breathing or candles or, different ways that people focus. But that one is, you're just constantly saying the mantra. Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, it works for me. Right. I mean, it doesn't stop the thoughts because they're going to come.
But it allows you to control them, I feel like.
It allows you to have something to come back to. You're really sort of still saying it even when the thoughts are going. But it's so relaxing. It really is. Like I did it before I came here. I was like, Judy, you just better get your TM done before you go because you need it. Because I was nervous,
Well, you're doing a great job.
I don't do this kind of thing.
No, it's awesome. Really, we appreciate you being here.
I appreciate been a pleasure. I was so tickled when Sam asked me.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I guess as we wrap up here, are there any recommendations or handoffs you want to leave with the audience? This could be, a book, a person that influenced you, anything that you think if I left this with someone that might be watching, this would help them better their life somehow, or how they can reach you or Baja Burrito.
That's a big, I mean, I don't have anything in particular besides what I've said. I mean, obviously, come to Baja Burrito, especially before the building gets torn down. Hopefully, we'll figure out something and we can keep existing, but who knows? But no, not necessarily. Just, really, my one thing is go for it. Just go for it.
That's awesome. Yeah. Couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's it for today's episode. We hope you enjoyed the conversation and would greatly appreciate a review to help others find the show. If you know someone that might find use out of our podcast, be sure to send it their way. We release new episodes every Tuesday, so hit that follow and subscribe button to stay up to date. Catch you next week.